All right, we're talking with Ted Cruz, who's a candidate for Senate in Texas. He's a former Solicitor General of the state, and he's got quite a bit of good buzz going there. So what made you decide to want to do this? I know this is a big decision. How did it factor in with your family? That's always one of my, chief questions.
Well, my wife is excited about this step. I'm married. We've got 2 little girls. I've got a 2.5-year-old daughter, and then a brand new baby girl who's 3 months old. And that's actually part of the reason I'm running. Is as a dad, particularly as a dad of young kids, you necessarily think very hard about the future of the country and the future of your kids. And the reason I am running for Senate is I think this nation is at a crossroads, and we are facing what I consider to be the epic battle of our generation. Does this nation remain a free market economy? In my judgment, Barack Obama is the most radical president that has ever occupied the White House, and he believes passionately in government. And I think the people are rising up in incredible numbers, and they're hungry for leadership to defend free market principles, to defend liberty, and to defend the Constitution. And that's exactly why I'm running for U.S. Senate.
Well, I hear you have a compelling backstory, a compelling family story to tell. Could you relate a little bit of that?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. But my father is from Cuba originally, and he grew up in Cuba. He was born there. As a kid, he fought in the Cuban Revolution, and he ended up being thrown in prison. He was tortured, and in fact, he was almost killed. And my grandfather found him in prison. He bribed the prison guards, and he escaped, and he fled Cuba. And he ended up being admitted to the University of Texas. So in 1957, my dad arrived in Austin, Texas. He was 18 years old. He didn't speak a word of English. And he had just $100 sewn into his underwear. And he went and got a job as a dishwasher, making 50 cents an hour. And he worked 7 days a week and paid his way through school and got a job and started a business. And that's actually a big part of the reason that I'm running for office. Because when I was a little kid, my dad used to say to me all the time, when I faced oppression in Cuba, I had a place to flee to. If we lose our freedom here, where do we go?
Right, and that's something that a lot of people, and I've talked to some Soviet, people that were born and lived under the Soviet Empire for years, and they say the same thing. I mean, they look at this nation and they say, wow, what's going on here? What do you think is going on here, Mr. Cruz?
Well, you put your finger on something that I think is very much true. It is a blessing to be the child of an immigrant who fled oppression, because it makes you realize how fragile liberty is, how easy it is for liberty to be taken away. And, I think we are seeing a great awakening. I mean, I'm incredibly optimistic because the American people are rising up and saying enough is enough. Enough government spending, enough drawing of power into Washington. We will not go quietly into the night. We will not give away our liberties. And that's what it's going to take. I am convinced the American people won't accept the Obama agenda, because when the government takes control of the economy in our everyday lives, what is lost is liberty and opportunity. And there are no values more central to what it means to be an American, to what it means to be a Texan, than to value liberty and opportunity above all else.
So I take it probably wouldn't be a big fan of TARP?
I am not a fan of the federal government spending too much money, taking over the economy, and controlling our day-to-day lives. For centuries, the great divide has been between government control and collectivism and socialism on the one hand, and limited governments and free markets and individual liberty on the other hand. That's the basic fight that is played out. And under this administration, our government has galloped further and faster towards government control of the economy. And quite frankly, the government spending and the deficit and the debt, they're out of control. And the American people are looking for real, serious leadership that stands up and stops this before we do serious and irrevocable damage to our nation.
Well, one of the things that is a very important duty of a senator is, of course, judicial nominations and confirmations, I should say. What exactly is your opinion on the sort of judge that you would like to see on the Supreme Court, for instance?
Well, as you know, I had the enormous privilege when I came out of law school of serving as a law clerk to Chief Justice William Rehnquist on the U.S. Supreme Court. And Chief Justice Rehnquist was an extraordinary man. He was a very dear friend. He was a mentor. I had the great honor of being a pallbearer at his funeral. In my opinion, the role of a judge is to follow the law, is to respect the Constitution, and not to make policy from the bench. We have seen an unfortunate and growing problem of unelected judges who view it as their job to decide the major policy issues of the day. And that's not the job of judges. It's the job of elected legislatures reflecting the will of the people. Under our Constitution, sovereignty resides with we the people, the American people, and it's not the job of judges to make all the hard policy calls. That's the people's responsibility.
Excellent. And one final question. Obviously, another important duty of the Senate is foreign policy. And with the things going on in Egypt right now, where do you see this all leading? Do you have any opinion where you think it might end up? And how, indeed, wherever it ends up, will it affect Israel?
It is right now, obviously, a very fast-moving situation and a perilous situation. At this point, no one knows exactly what's going to happen and what the ruling situation and governing situation is going to end up in Egypt. I do think when it comes to matters of foreign policy and national security, that politics should end at the water's edge. And so I'm not going to second guess in the last week or two the president's conduct. I will say more broadly, though, that there is a pattern over the decades that when an American president stands strong and defends America and defends her allies, that freedom and her allies flourish. And when an American president is weak and embarrassed of America and apologizes, her allies suffer. If you look to the last president, who I think had a lot in common with President Barack Obama, it was Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter, much like President Obama, was consistently apologizing for the United States, did not understand, much like President Obama, the incredible legacy of freedom and opportunity that this nation has had. And under Carter's presidency, we saw Iran, an administration that had been an ally of the United States, fall and be replaced by Ayatollah Khomeini, a radical, anti-American extremist who immediately took U.S. hostages and held them for 444 days while the American president wrung his hands, powerless to effect it. I think with respect to President Obama, he brings that same lack of understanding of American exceptionalism. One of the most unfortunate things he did when he was first president is went on a worldwide apology tour, seeming to seek out every two-bit dictator and apologize for the United States, including notably going to Cairo. One of his first speeches was in Cairo, where he gave a speech where he said Iran has a right, and he used that word right, to nuclear technology. I think that was grossly irresponsible. And you made reference to Israel. Israel has been an incredibly strong ally of the United States, and I think we need to be unrelenting in standing by Israel. Israel is virtually the lone voice of democracy in the Middle East, and this administration, to say this administration has been a fair-hearted friend of Israel would be to understate it dramatically. And I think that is the wrong thing to do, and it's not in the interest of the United States. It's the interest of the United States to have a strong Israel that protects liberty and that stands by U.S. interest.
Well, thank you very much, Ted Cruz, and good luck in your run in Texas.
Well, thank you very much.